Hi guys, and welcome back to my kitchen. And you're getting munched out by this Creole queen that's always from New Orleans, no matter where I go. So I'm doing another smothered favorite, and that's some smothered pork chop. This was actually a request on my Instagram. If y'all ain't following me on Instagram, stop what you're doing now. First, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Then go ahead on over and add me on Instagram. That's Creole Queen Bistro. If you need to know how to spell it, go right back to the beginning of this video, and it's spelled just like that. So I got some bone-in pork chops. They're not real thick. They're kind of on the thin side, but not too thin. But I still make sure I have my bone in the pork chops because that bone add a lot of flavor. So I'm going to season both sides of my pork chops exactly the same with this beef noir. And this a beef bouillon, you guys. I'm using just water. I'm not using the stock. And if you guys know, when I'm not using the stock, I like to use this beef noir bouillon to add flavor to my water that I'm using. So I'm going to season my pork chop with the beef bouillon. I know you guys probably add it to the water, but we're all about building flavor here. So I'm going to add it to my pork chop so that it adds that salt to my pork chops and also flavor to my water when I add this pork chop to that water for it to smother down. Now, I've told you guys before what smothering is about, right? But I'm going to tell you again, smothering is basically cooking something down in meat. Like cooking meat down in water or in gravy. So like I have smothered cabbage. If you guys go back, that's cooking that cabbage down in a stock. So we're just cooking it down for hours. That's to smother it. Just to smother it in love, seasoning, and flavor. So these pork chops are going to season on both sides, you guys, with the cayenne pepper, onion powder, salt, beef bouillon, and my cayenne pepper. I know I said that twice, y'all, because I like mine's a little spicy, so I add like a little more cayenne pepper than you probably would. But however you like to season your meat, please season it. Just make sure that you season it generously on both sides. So while we're seasoning them, we're going to make sure we heat up our pot like I'm doing so. You guys know I like to take my hand, put it at the bottom. I do not touch the bottom of the pan. We're feeling the temperature that comes off of the heat of the stove into the pan. If you don't feel the heat, then the pot is not hot enough. You should not have to touch what you have inside of that pot. So once I start heating up my pot, I actually forgot to tell y'all, I do add a little flour on top of my pork chops. That's just to help thicken that gravy. I add the flour like it's seasoning. Just a tablespoon of flour on both sides of my pork chops. And then I'm going to add a little oil into my pan so that nothing sticks at the bottom. I also like to brown my pork chops before I start to smother them in the gravy because it adds a lot of flavor. So when I put my oil at the bottom, you guys know I had stopped using vegetable oil, but today I did use vegetable oil. I used a little bit of vegetable oil that I already had in my cast iron pan because I fried pork chops a couple of days ago, and this oil has a little flavor to it. We're building flavors here, y'all. You gotta understand, I'm gonna say flavor because my food is flavorful. So I'm gonna heat this pan up, and then I'm gonna add my pork chops in a little bit at a time because I don't want to overcrowd my pot, because I want to be able to brown my pork chops without burning them and quickly, because we don't want to cook it. We just want to brown the outside of it. You guys, I'm going to show you guys what I mean by that. So you see when I lift this up, it's brown real nice on both sides, but it's still not cooked all the way through. It's still pink, and that's exactly what we want. This pork chop is going to cook all the way through during the smothering process. So you guys still see the pink. It's okay. That's what you should see at this moment. Just go ahead and finish browning it. I'm going to put it to the side. You guys, I actually had a mishap where I forgot to show y'all how I made the gravy from scratch. So I'm going to show you guys now. We're basically going to make like a small roux. So we have our oil in our pan. You guys remember, right? The oil is equal parts fat to flour. So I have vegetable oil. I'm still using that same vegetable oil I used to brown my chops, which is the oil that was in my cast iron pan that I fried pork chops with. So it still has flavor to it. So I don't have to season my roux. I'm going to mix this up really good. You guys see, I got a bigger spoon. I had a small spoon. It wasn't going to work. I want to incorporate this real well. So what I'm going to do is cook the flour out of this roux. I'm not worrying about making the roux a darker color because I don't want a dark color with my pork chops. If you do, you guys can add this thing called kitchen bouquet, and that adds color to your roux without cooking your roux for hours. Kitchen hack, guys. Kitchen bouquet. It's what you add to your soups or stocks or gravy when you want to darken them without cooking your roux for hours. Right now, we're just going to cook our roux so that we get that flour taste out. The roux wasn't as thick as I wanted it to be. It's a little better now. If you guys see the difference, it was earlier to what I'm doing now. I just added a little maybe a half a tablespoon at a time. I started off with 4 tablespoons of oil and 4 tablespoons of flour. I wound up putting 4.5 tablespoons of flour and 4 tablespoons of oil just to get the thickness that I want. So this is gonna stir it around for about 5 minutes just to get that flour taste out. Maybe about 8 minutes, depending on how low or how high you have your pot. As you guys can see, it's still a little foamy. That's what we want to cook out. I want to cook out that little bit of foam. Once we get that foam out, that's how we know that flour taste is gone. So let me go ahead and get that together. So I have my pot up on a medium high, and you guys can see I got all the bubbles gone up out of my flour and oil, which is aka my roux. Just want you guys to understand that the roux is flour and oil. Nothing hard, nothing too difficult, nothing too hard to remember. Flour and oil makes your roux. And we cook the flour out of this roux. We're not making it dark or anything like that. We're just going to use this roux to thicken up our gravy. So I'm actually about to add a little water at a time to it. The reason why we add a tad bit of water at a time to the roux is so that we don't lose the thickening agent of that roux. If we add too much water to the roux at once, it is going to like not thicken up. It's going to clump up and it's going to be a horrible looking gravy. So just going to add a little water at a time. I'm actually using a cup of water at a time, but I'm only adding in about 2 to 3 tablespoons of that water at a time and mixing it all the way in. You guys see I actually switched spoons again and I went into a whisk. This actually helps incorporate that flour, that oil, and that water in really good. So we're going to mix that up really good until it becomes a nice soft paste. You're just going to add 2 to 3 tablespoons of water at a time until you make as much gravy as you want. And if you were doing this how I originally did it, we're going to make a nice small paste of roux, add your pork chops to your pot, and then add more water on it. We want enough water where the water is actually covering the pork chops. But if you're doing it the same steps that I'm doing right now, which is making your roux and adding it to your water and your pork chops that's already on the side cooking, that's fine. So we're going to add a little more water. Like I said, I want a soft paste. It's still a little thicker, so I'm going to thin it out some more with just a little bit of water. We want it the texture of gooey oatmeal. We don't want it clumpy like oatmeal, but we want that creaminess of oatmeal. Or maybe I should say grits, like a nice southern grits. We wanted that texture because, you know, grits aren't supposed to be clumpy. It's supposed to be nice and creamy, and that's exactly what we want. And what we're going to do is add this roux to our pot that we have on the side over there. The pot that we have on the side over there is already gravy made in the pot, but we're going to pretend like no gravy is made. So when I pull this like so, and y'all see that gravy, act like it's not gravy. We're going to act like that's just water in there. So if that's just water, and we put enough water in our pot where it was covering our pork chops, and we had that water sitting on the side on the heat so it could get hot. If you're using hot roux, you want to use hot stock or hot water. You don't want to put hot roux in cold water. You don't want to put cold roux in cold water, or, you know, vice versa. So I'm going to use about 4 tablespoons of this roux at a time, and I'm just going to add it into my water and take my whisk and whisk it up really well, and then let this cook down for about 45 minutes to 30 minutes or until this pork chop is falling off the bone. If you guys have made it this far, you have made your own gravy, and I'm so freaking proud of y'all. Thank you for getting munched out with me today. In about 30 minutes after you add that to it, you should have something as delicious as this. I hope you guys enjoyed this recipe. Like, comment, and share. And thank you guys for getting munched out with me today.